There we go.
Hey,
Hey, what's going on, Ron? Nice to meet you.
yeah, nice to virtually meet you.
You too. You're out on the East Coast?
Yeah, New Jersey, dead center.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
the agricultural haven of the New Jersey area, for sure.
Well, great. Well, Jess has been trying to connect us for quite some time.
Yeah, she's doing good work, and she's a great learner, I must say.
Yeah,
She's
of
very
course.
she's very interested, so it
Yeah.
makes
So
our
I,
lives
I
easier.
I'd love just to start with you and hear a little bit about your story. I was just poking around on your site, and it seems like you guys have quite a amazing story from your own personal journey.
Yeah, we I was doing a lot of altruistic work, some volunteer work for some nonprofits abroad, and growing up, I was raised in your traditional American culture, and at that point in the time and in our generation, a lot of processed foods, a lot of
Mac and
uh,
cheese.
mac and cheese, cereal for breakfast,
Stay with me. Yeah.
Yeah, and even as a young kid, I remember like reading some of this stuff and being like, are people eating this all around the world? Like, or is this just like something that we're eating and we have access to? And why do we have such like an unlimited supply? Like, I used to question this as like a very young kid, which is comical now that I'm 40, and like I should have listened to my intuition. Uh, but we ended up I was doing altruistic work, and not aside from everything we're about to talk about, I took a vaccination that triggered my autoimmune condition,
Mm.
and and it flared immensely, and it started to attack my heart after about 35 days of 104 fever, and joint discomfort and pain, the inability to eat. And I was finally diagnosed through exemption. That's the only reason I was diagnosed, is because I responded so well to corticosteroids. And within 24 hours, my appetite was back. My heart, the swelling around my heart ceased. I had developed pericarditis, and then it was really just an ongoing battle of how do I wean myself off these drugs naturally, so they don't burden me in the future, and I can increase my longevity and my well-being of life in that period. And so I took a nutritional approach, referred to by a friend of mine who was an acupuncturist, or is an acupuncturist. He's no longer serving in New Jersey. That's why I use the past tense.
Bummer.
Yeah, he moved up to Ithaca. Not a bad area, so I kind of give it to him. But a good friend, a neighbor, guided me through it, and I started reading into nutrition and realized, man, for the last 30 years of my life, I've been just ripping my body apart, and I need to figure out how to reduce the chronic inflammation that's causing all these problems. And within 6 months of just eating pure, clean, whole, I was able to wean myself to about 75% of my prescribed medication that doctors were telling me I was going to be on indefinitely. And I'd say 2 years after that, I weaned myself off of it entirely, and I haven't had to go back on in now, so since 2016 was my last flare, so 6 years I've been completely prescription free.
Good for you. What
Thanks, man.
what powerful story. I think that for many individuals that I speak with that have kind of started to walk this path, whether it be through their own healing or whether it be through now your career path, is that usually at some part of the story, it's I wasn't getting the results that I expected, or I knew that there was potentially more out there. I'm curious with you overall, like what were some of the first steps or what were some of the major nutritional changes that you felt had the biggest impact on your own healing?
Well, when I also got sick, I was the more vegetarian based. Like, I had the whole mentality in my head that animal protein was bad for you. Meanwhile, I'm scarfing down Lucky Charms for breakfast. You know?
Oatmeal, yeah.
Yeah, and it was really just realizing like, oh, meat is a whole food, and meat is actually super nutrient dense and good for you. And I remember, growing up, I'd always used to eat that breakfast, that highly sweetened breakfast, and I'd be hungry in an hour, and and then like I'd have incredible blood sugar rushes up and down where I was not only hungry but I was tired, and I didn't put two and two together until I started changing my diet and started incorporating more animal protein and fat in the morning, and was like, wow, I'm fully satiated. I feel like I can literally skip lunch, and I'm energized, and I'm clear headed, and my skin looks better, and I feel better now at 40 than I did all the way through my mid 20s through college.
Yeah.
And and one thought is like, wow, this is life changing. I'm so happy that I was able to discover this before it got really bad. But at the same time, I'm like, damn, what would I be like if I had taken care of myself like this my entire life? So, obviously now with a 5-year-old son, we're teaching him very differently.
For you, yeah, it's just it's one of the other things that I've constantly see, or if not, I've learned from my own experience, is that a lot of these food companies have a lot of cash flow to market, and
Yeah.
just of the things that you read or my own experience, what I grew up with as well, it's almost like as I tend to do the opposite, the better I feel.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is kind of sad, but I
Hard
think
to
that
say it.
the way of the world. So I'd love to hear kind of about how your own journey, how did that dial into what you guys are up to now? And I'd love to hear a little bit more about your company as a whole and kind of how that works and the whole process behind it.
Well, as speaking of, cost of food, and all the money that these big companies have to market, on top of it, most of the stuff that they're offering in their food is subsidized by the government. It's commodity agriculture that is grown in mass production, destroying our land, destroying the health of our soils, essentially destroying the health of our food. And it's cheap because it's subsidized and available everywhere. I mean, we have surplus of grains we're shipping across the world. We took a broken system and just exponentially grew it. And because of that now, we're trying to get back to our roots of a system and get back to whole foods and try to minimize all these highly processed foods. And so in order to do that, we have to spend a lot of money. And I don't see the problem with it now that I see how I've benefited from it. I'm like, wow, if I'm going to spend money anywhere, I'm going to spend it on my food. Like like the way that I feel is just fantastic. The amount of stuff that I can get done in the matter of minutes, or hours or days compared to what it used to be is mind-boggling. And so we started once we saw the cost to eat this way in order to get my health back, my wife and I, we decided to try to share some of this information and even share some of the, produce more food with what we had to purchase to maybe supply some of our friends and our colleagues in the Jersey City area, which is where we were. So we were cooking home cooked meals out of our one floor railroad style apartment. Our
I
living room
love
was
it.
boxes. Our living room was nothing but boxes and packages. And then as we dove deeper into it, I studied soil science at Rutgers University.
Wow.
I was a landscape architect, so part of our curriculum was studying organic matter in soil chemistry. So when I started diving, when we were ordering all this and buying all this food, obviously we were just going to our local Whole Foods, or we were ordering from these large national distributors, grass-fed meat. But then you'd get it to you, and nothing was labeled, nothing's really said anything, and you just hope that what they were sending you was what you were receiving. but there's really no way in like a decentralized system to know exactly what you're getting unless like you're talking with the people producing it. So, we were producing all these meals, and then we decided, hey, let's start venturing out and talking to farmers. And we started talking to farmers in the area who were practicing regenerative agriculture at that time, which wasn't even a word. It was more just sustainable agriculture and grass fed and pasture raised and any other marketing term you can come up with. And, obviously they have to do it because how do you compete with all these large multi-million, billion-dollar marketing brands that are just labeling everything with every possible logo known to man to make you think that what you're ingesting is actually good for you or the environment. So we started talking to the farmers and sourcing some of the provisions and cooking with them. And I mean, just the value, the difference in taste, that was just mind-boggling. I'm like, this is sad. Like, this is actually where we started and originated, and we just took this like complete 180 in an opposing direction as fast as we could. And so now we just 8 years later, fast forward, we're really more of a provisional services. We just don't have the time to cook. That was a big help from the pandemic. The pandemic really pushed the envelope for the demand for having that transparency and that traceability to their food, because we saw how vulnerable our food system was. Yep. And so a lot of people jumped on board this. So we kind of had to, put aside the prepared foods. We have friends who are helping us do the prepared foods who are, personal chefs, on the occasion, but we're really more of a provisional service, and we're partnered with about 30 local regenerative sustainable farmers, mostly in the New Jersey area, some in PA, and then some from the Hudson Valley.
Good for you. So it seems like for your guys' business that the pandemic was potentially an opportunity.
Oh yeah, hands down. It was very hard when we were doing this because, people wanted to care. The conversation was there. We were in farmers markets talking to people and they wanted to care, but it still came down to money. And, people weren't comfortable paying $6.50 for a dozen eggs. Yep. Now that you can say, well, I can tell you every breed of chicken that laid those eggs, what that chicken ate, who raised those chickens, where they came from, the grass, the type of grass that they're foraging on.
Wow.
I mean, like, you should pay $6.50 for this dozen of eggs. Versus
no question that.
the $1.50 dozen of white eggs that are just, you have no idea what those animals are eating, ingesting, how they're cooped up. I don't care what the USDA says. There's a lot of money in those organizations that also can't keep it a closed system and know everything about what it's doing. So unless like you really start getting involved with your community of farmers, or at least those aggregating to help bridge that gap between the farmers and the community, it's really not even worth questioning the amount of money you're spending on your food.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. Obviously, from what we see is that if you aren't spending on your food today, you're going to be spending on your health at some point.
Yeah.
For some people that could be in 5 years, some people that could be in 20 years, but at some point, if you don't provide your body with the necessary building blocks that it needs to thrive, at some point the machine's going to come apart. That's how it works.
That's how it works.
I've just been diving into some of the farm bill stuff because I know that that's coming up in terms of like the federal passing of that, which happens every 10 years, correct?
Yeah.
Which this may not be the complete direction we want this conversation to go, but curious, kind of tying it back to subsidies and tying it back to just the way that the central government kind of treats small farmers. What have you learned? What have you seen from that process overall?
Well, I mean, small farmers are granted a lot. The main reason that many farmers take this on is because of, tax deductions, because of, the access to capital funding from, whether it's grant programs or steward loan programs. They have access. And I think the hardship is like when you're practicing regenerative, it's the work. Like there's a lot of work. It's a tiresome work, especially when you have livestock. I mean, that's a 365 day a year job.
Sure.
So this is why it wasn't just that the government was subsidizing and offering farmers, straight cash, to produce a crop, but it also made the farming easier. You could sit in a tractor all day for 8 months out of the year, ride up and down these alleyways, produce your surplus of grain, and go on with your day, go on with your life. It's much different in a small pocket, regenerative agricultural system. Like you need more hands-on because of our shift in our food economy during that period of industrialization, where we obviously industrialized the whole thing. The that drastic change has made it very hard for small farmers or even the help that's coming on to survive on what the farmers can pay these people. And it's only because there's not that there's not enough demand, but we also question how much we're spending on these goods. And there needs to be a shift. Like we do need to be spending more money on these goods so that more people want to get involved in farming. More people want to get involved in all of this. And especially since there are these government programs that are willing to help with that, it should just make it more appealing. It's just, I think we're just in this shift of, a mental paradigm, especially with, what we see on social media and online, and just people traveling the world and traveling freely when they want to, and doing this and doing like it's just not natural. And, I'm not calling it out. It's just that I think at some point, we have to get back to our roots and realize like, I should be in the sun. I should be digging in the dirt. I should be growing things for, my friends and family in the community. But how do we make that sustainable and economically viable for the masses when the economic has taken such a drastic turn? It's, people want to make money very, very fast and very quick. We got a huge banking system that puts money in lots of people's pockets. It's a good thing that a lot of these bankers want to eat healthy food, because they're the ones that don't even question where they spend their money on food, and they're the ones spending it with us. So, it's good that exists, but there needs to be more hands-on farming. And I think if people understood that there are good government programs to help people get started and get moving in this, and they can create something that's not only self-sufficient, but also can benefit the community, more people will want to get involved.
I didn't know that, honestly. So I think that's one, at least in my perspective and my paradigm, oftentimes I view like the government as just kind of like this evil doer, that only has evil. But like anything, it's always in the gray, right? Yeah. It's never black, it's never white. It's always like somewhere over here that's kind of right there. And if you have positive intention, you can take that and actually use that for the good of the community.
Yeah, totally. That just as there's bad money, there's good money. Just as there's bad government, there's good government. And, it's always been like that. It's just the influence to push people to want to do this, the work. Like, it's just people don't want to work like that anymore. It's, sure. We're already kind of running ourselves ragged as it is. Most of us can't even partake in our families, day to day. We hardly see our kids because we have to pay for all these bills, and this mortgage is expensive. But it's like where there's like, for instance, where there's like these state programs helping farmers, there's also these state regulations that don't permit people, farmers to develop more property, or create more property on their land, because there's this uncertainty of building multiple dwellings on a certain acre lot, and what it's going to do to our wastewater and what it's going to do to our land. But in hindsight, it's just regulations to prevent people from taking control over something that the government owns collectively. But I think the government also understands that it's going to happen, whether it happens on a very unhealthy mentality, shift. Where there's a very big shift in paradigm, and it comes with brute force, or it's going to happen sustainably, and people are going to gradually take that course. And then you got, global elitists like Bill Gates buying up a bunch of land so he can just pump a bunch of processed foods into people. And like, is anyone really trusting this man? But the guy's got all the money in the world. I mean, he's the one building towers on police stations and building, his towers in farm fields and paying the small farmers for it because the farmers will take anything because people aren't willing to pay for the food that they're producing, so they'll take wherever they can get it. And
Yep.
it's just like, is it really the government, or is it really these global elitists who want full control over the world? And I'm going to say the latter. And I think,
Couldn't agree more.
yeah, I think the small governments that we're creating, that the small governments, the local governments that are starting to get more involved and become more educated, because they're not all educated on this. The more that we can figure out how to collectively educate them, I think we'll take that slow, positive transition.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. And the more it's interesting, the more you become educated, the more it's that you recognize, at least in my own opinion, again, in my own journey, I'll say, is that I can worry about that all day and I can dream about that every single night. But the one thing I can control is where I invest my time and energy and cash flow to, because
Yep.
those are the things that I can't control. So instead of trying to spend my energy and time focusing out there, why don't we spend our time and energy controlling the controllables?
Yep.
So would
Sorry.
love just to kind of hear about your thoughts about the food system as a whole and kind of potentially like where do you see it going in the next like 1 to 5 years, and what can people do about it?
Well, it's
I know it's a pretty broad
yeah,
question there.
yeah.
So
I just read an article yesterday that a partner buddy of mine sent me about the market value of Blue Apron, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with Blue Apron in
a
Chicago.
little bit, yeah.
Yeah, how their market value has dropped like 30% because their quarterly revenue didn't meet what it was supposed to meet, which was only 109 million versus like 118 million. And I'm reading this article and I'm like in a quarter period. I mean, I talk to anybody in this area about Blue Apron, and all they tell me is how bad they are. Like, it's like you get the same things. It's like some of the food is spoiled. It's the packaging comes undone. It's one negative thing after another. But yet this company is generating 100 and whatever million in a quarter, and it's like it just shows you that there's like a substantial gap between those who are really moving the envelope in this direction and everybody else. Um, so it's like, how do we educate everybody else, and how do we inspire them to want to support their local farmers all the time, not just occasionally because it makes us feel good, but like all the time. Like, why are we not putting money in these pockets all the time? These are people that can control and influence our future and our future generations. Like, they should be the first people we want to spend money with. And I read that, and that was like the first thought that came to my mind. I was like, wow, we got a lot of work to do. So truthfully, it's the hardest battle with all of this is setting that mindset, like being like, we have to be okay, living this minimalist lifestyle and trying to influence the system that has been so broken for so long, because it took that period of time to break it. It's probably going to take that time to fix it. And fortunately enough, we have access to technology like this, so we can actually spread those messages much faster. So we might actually be able to fix it in a quicker amount of time. But, then again, you plant, just for an example, a pawpaw tree, a fruit that has been non-existent in New Jersey up until like a few years ago, where all of a sudden now we're like, oh, wow, pawpaws are fantastic. I didn't even know New Jersey could grow these things. And like, I'm one of them. I've been in this field for 10 years now, and I still was like, wow, New Jersey can grow these, but it takes that tree 10 years to produce fruit for the first time. So
Sure.
it's like retraining our minds to be like, let's just settle down. Like, let's just be content with what we got and enjoy like the food and like the community of people that we're surrounded by. I mean, the farmers, the people who are investing their time and their energy. I mean, I work with 3 farmers that have so much wealth, they could easily stop doing anything but instead they're investing their time and their money into like producing better food for the local community. Like these guys could have retired years ago, you know, and they're not. So it's like they understand, like, wow, this is like this stuff needs to be fixed, and whether it's by farmers who are just sustaining themselves to survive, who would just have a passion for it and love getting their hands dirty. Like we work with plenty of those too. Like those are like, they won't bring you collard greens unless they're harvesting them like fresh thing in the morning and they're warm. Like we don't want to bring you 2-day old collard greens. We want you to get the best collard greens, and like they're passionate about it. And you know, so we work with like very wealthy guys who are doing great work, and we work with like the farmers that are just sustaining enough to keep a roof over their head and good food in their stomach, but are passionate and enjoy it, and we're bridging them. But I think, you know, you said 1 to 5 years. I don't know what that looks like, to be honest. Like it's, you know, we're going to need more farmers. Like we're going to need more farmers with this passion. We're going to need larger farmers to shift their models. You know, whether it's, you know, it's going to be a slow process. Obviously they have to sustain themselves economically, and people understand that. Well, some people understand that. Yeah. Some people understand that. But, you know, they have to make that transition. And, you know, we just got to cross our fingers that they do, because there are enough of them that if they do and they start to make those transitions, it's going to really impact the entire paradigm.
Yeah, I think what I took away from that as a whole is that education is still a huge component, because that's really the only way that you're going to get someone to shift their everyday actions. Is, are they educated about the overall process? And I think just as a consumer myself, I would also consider myself an expert in the industry, and I still am learning more every day and becoming educated about soil health and animal health and what that actually means. And so there's just so much for us as a culture to learn, that in one way it's like, oh my gosh, we have so much work to do. But I think the other side of that coin is what tremendous opportunity we have.
Yeah. Like there's really, you know, we're impacting the environment. We're impacting our health, our individual health. You know, we're impacting our, you know, soil, our, you know, if you want to continue talking about environment, we're impacting our economy. You know, we're putting more control in the hands of like the people in our community, you know, something that we can trace and see. There's absolutely no negative outcome from this, making these decisions and educating ourselves on these very simple matters. Like I said, this used to just be our nature. This is what we just did. Farmers just grew, you know, they would grow, you know, I work with one farmer who's been an eighth generation potato farmer, Red Hill Harvest out in PA. And they used to like take horses up over the mountains into town and sell potatoes at like 3 cents a piece, 2 cents a piece, you know. And now we buy them at $3 a pound. But, you know, now they have 100 acres. Now they're converting those 100 acres into certified organic. They took the rest of their acres that they were growing other commodity crops on, and now they have cows grazing out in the fields to start bringing grass-fed beef. And, you know, now the cows are laying their excrements and adding benefits to their soil through compaction of organic matter, you know, through herding and running around. And, you know, then they have chickens that come and graze the fields, you know, after the cows and add their own nutrient benefits to the soil. And they're trying to restore the soil naturally. You know, it is still like a closed system. It's still not the wild, but,
Sure.
You know, even now, if we talk about the wild, it's, you know, people are kind of forced to hunt in enclosed areas. So it's like, what's the difference in reality? You know, if you can only hunt in this specific area, how is that any different from raising animals in this specific area?
Sure.
You know, and it's because, you know, our population is so large, and we want to be able to maintain and manage our, you know, the Earth's food production. So, you know, it's a crazy shift. It's a crazy change, and it's going to take some time, but it's all for the better. As you said, you know, it's definitely everything we want to be learning. And, you know, maybe it's something that we, you know, and I see it now, you know, I see schools starting to bring gardens and things and back into, into part of the educational curriculum, and maybe those are the things that we start getting back in tune with, and on a more frequent basis, and it becomes a standard.
I couldn't agree more. So last question for you here. How can people find you? How can individuals support you? What does that look like I would say, for people in your area and for those not in your area?
Yeah, so there's, we're an aggregator. We're actually currently looking for farmland to help create a direct stream into our our supply along with our farm partners. And there are aggregators. There's plenty of aggregators out there, and there's a couple good websites that I can list in chats. One is called realmilk.com.
Yeah.
And the other is
Deli
called
Family, baby.
Yeah, I mean that's run by the Weston A. Price Foundation, and I believe it's run by them, or it's
it is. Yeah. We're actually, quick side note here, we're actually their main, I shouldn't say their main, but we are one of their top sponsors for their conference that's out in Knoxville in 2 weeks.
Oh, nice.
So us and Children's Health Defense, I believe, that's the name, CHD, JFK Juniors.
Oh yeah.
So us,
he's a huge
us,
advocate.
Yeah. So us and his crew with his business, we're the top sponsors for that conference coming up here in 2.5 weeks.
Oh wow. Yeah, it's definitely a conference I've always wanted to attend. It's with the nature of this business, like we're very limited.
Good luck.
Our free time, but we're trying to figure that out. We do like some free time. We need that to alleviate the stress as much as good food. But it's difficult. It's definitely difficult, especially with a 5-year-old and
life.
And then there's another one called eatwild.com. They also will show you different farms in the area that are producing regeneratively that you can go and visit. Those are the two that I know off the top of my head. In terms of our business, we do only serve like the New York metro only. It's actually quite a lot. We serve the New York metro area. We serve just about all of New Jersey, and we serve certain counties in PA. We're in the process of redoing our website, but the areas we serve on our website will detail, the areas that we serve. And, we really try to make it as closed of a system and sustainable of a system as possible. So we don't buy overpriced refrigerated trucks. We try to eliminate the need for diesel. We really use personal drivers that are all in line. Like one of our drivers is the New Jersey chapter leader of the Weston A. Price Foundation.
Wow.
So he drives for us. He comes from one county in New Jersey. He comes to us and then delivers on his way back home. And we have 4 or 5 drivers that do that scattered throughout New Jersey and New York that come pick up from the farm. We package everything, and then they distribute on their way back home. It minimizes the carbon footprint. It totally minimizes food waste. In the 8+ years that we've been doing this, we haven't wasted a single drop of food. We have found food for every and this isn't a country that lost me there.
There we go.
You got me back?
Yeah.
This is in a country that's wastes about $50 billion of food annually, and we haven't wasted a drop of food.
40% of food. That to me, that's the craziest stat ever. We say that we're trying to feed the quote unquote world, but then 40% of our food's just thrown away, and only 20 or 30% of all the food that we produce in the USA is actually for food.
Yeah.
I mean, the rest goes to diesel. It goes to energy. It's like, if that's what they're trying to pitch at us, like, there has to be more to the story.
Has to be more to the story. And I mean, on top of it, they're sending surplus grains to most of these countries that are starving, and they're still dying of malnutrition. They're not dying of starvation, but they're dying of malnutrition. So now that's like that whole, greenwashing. It's greenwashing is everywhere. Yeah, we're out here doing this. We're out here. I see it in every advertisement. I can't even watch a football game anymore without a million advertisements making you think like, oh, that huge Pfizer company's doing great work for people. Like, no, they're not. they just have billions to spend in marketing, and who's managing that? Like, who's overseeing that? So
Great.
it's to me, it's just completely not. It's all nonsense, ridiculousness, and then there are more people starting to think outside the box and realize these things, which is great, which is definitely what we need. But yeah, we're really in it. We take back packaging, we take back ice packs, we take back tote bags. Like,
Sweet.
we are trying to minimize waste, and be as sustainable as possible. I mean, I even buy old vehicles that like have no life left to them and just run them into the ground to get from point A to point B, because I see, companies like doing distribution, spending $150,000 on these refrigerated trucks. And I'm like, you're just even though you're a local food system, you're still perpetuating the same problems that currently exist. So whether you know it or not, they might not even be aware of that. It's just there. The shift is serious. Like, it really needs to shift and be really about the people. And the community driving you, as opposed to, the branding and the marketing driving the people.
100%. Well, I'm extremely happy that we were able to connect, and it seems like in terms of how we view the overall world and our own values, it seems like we're extremely aligned.
Yeah, definitely. I actually wish that I could pick your brain more. I know we're all limited with time here, but I'd love to chat with you outside of here and just learn more about, what you guys are doing in your practice. I follow you all the time, and I love when you go into the stores and you call out all the BS. It's like one of the things that was in my mind to do when Instagram first came out. And I'm just like, I don't have time for that. And I'm not a nutritionist. I study nutrition, but I'll tell you what, when I got into nutrition and then I corresponded it with soil health, and I saw how similar both worlds are. I mean, they're almost identical.
Yes.
Everything needs amino acids, everything needs fats. It's like, without those, we have nothing. So, yeah, it's crazy to see. So I look forward to connecting with you, whether on another Instagram live later on, where I ask you questions, or, just to shoot the shit.
Sounds good. Well, let me just ask, it looks like we have a few folks still on, a handful of individuals. They jumped off. But anybody that's on live, you guys have any questions? Anybody? Looks like the majority that were on just jumped off here at the end. But let's give it just 1 second here. We'll see if you have any questions.
Yeah, we'll get better at these things. I've done these things a couple times. I did one with a soil health scientist at a Rodale Institute. They're actually big pioneers for regenerative agriculture, and I didn't record it. I have no documentation of it at all. I'm like, this is why I can't do these things. I don't have the time to. The mind doesn't have time to put into this.
Well, awesome. Well, Ron, it was amazing to connect with you and learn about you and all the positive things that you guys are up to. And most importantly, I think for me, it was amazing to hear about your own story.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it.
That when we come from a place of education that's really from your own personal experience, there's just so much more power.
Definitely.
Well, hope to connect soon, and have a great rest of your Tuesday here.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you having me.
Yep, sounds good. See you, Ron.
All right, brother.